Hello everybody, welcome back to Graceful Embroidery. In this video I'm going to show you what happened to me when I inadvertently took the embroidery out of the hoop by mistake. You will see how once one thing went wrong, it was quite possible for other things to go wrong as well. But I'm going to take you through the process. I made several mistakes, not just taking the partial embroidery out of the hoop, but I had to rehoop it, and then I made a few other errors. My hope is that it will prevent you from making some of the mistakes that I made. There's lots to learn along the way, so come with me on this rather eventful journey. Here is this quilt block, and it's been stitched out on 2 layers of stitch and tear. And no batting. I've used a beautiful pale pink silk dupion, which you can see here, which I think really looks great with these designs. It almost captures that beautiful combination, that beautiful colour that happens when cream is poured over strawberries. So all the colours of the embroidery have been stitched out, and then I've stopped and I've stupidly taken this out of the hoop, which I shouldn't have done because I was concentrating on the filming, but never mind. It will give me an opportunity of doing precise positioning on my machine. I suggest you don't take it out of the hoop. I've made a boo-boo there, but we all make boo-boos when we're doing our embroidery, and the secret is to work around them and get it sorted. So the idea is to turn this over, and when you do this and it's still in the hoop, I suggest you take a wad of batting, spare remnants, and place them underneath here, so that when it's in the hoop, it's not being pushed out of alignment. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rehoop this as best as I can, and then when I go back to the machine, I can move the design around and align it correctly. When you have to put something back in the hoop, it's useful to realise, let me just take the camera over here a bit, that you've got marks here that have been left on the stabilizer of where the hoop was. So it's best to use those. And as you can see, the hoop that I'm using here has got cohesive bandaging wrapped around it. So I've got to take it here because I've done 1 layer of stitch and tear, and I've laid a couple of strips left over from previous hoopings on top, which is what I normally do. So I've just got to pull those, make those proud, and now check that it's almost in the same place, checking all 4 corners, and now I'm going to push it in and clamp it shut. I'm going to undo it slightly and just make sure it's tight, and checking on the back won't hurt. That almost looks, I don't like this area here. It's funny, I don't know if it's me, but I always find that this area here is never very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that and very carefully flatten that out. I think it's always good to be aware of what's happening on the back of your hoop. As you see, this is just a little bit more tricky than it would normally be, because I think once something comes out of the hoop, it gets a little bit stretched. Now, I'm here now at my machine, and I've rechecked that everything is nice and tight in the hoop, and I did actually trim away the 2 strips that made up the 2nd layer of stitch and tear, just to get them out of the way so I could see a little bit better. And I've got a layer of batting, and this is Hobbs cotton batting. It's 80% cotton, but it's got 20% polyester in it. and then on the back of that is the sulky soft and tear, and I've held them together with a little bit of stitch and tear, but it's still very important when you hoop everything up like that, that everything is still, it's not got tucked out underneath at the corners. So putting your hand underneath just to check everything is a good idea. I've been thinking about our little dilemma, and I want to try and explain this to you. If you are dealing with a design that almost fills your hoop, to position it carefully and accurately when you're returning it to your machine, because you've taken it out by mistake like I did, or you took it out deliberately to remove the stabilizer and press the design, you have to be aware that positioning an 8-inch square block for an 8-inch square hoop, the machine probably won't let you move the design. There's no leeway top and bottom. So to get it accurately positioned, you would have to do it in a larger hoop so that there was some space on every side to move the design. So what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that the design is in the right place, and if it isn't, we've got to move it, which is a completely different thing to positioning the design on your machine. I hope I haven't lost you there. And so as I slid this onto the embroidery unit, I thought, you're not going to be able to do anything. This isn't going to work. And I need to put this design in my 260 square hoop so that I can fiddle around and get it accurate. The other option, if you haven't got a larger hoop, is to actually use my outline alignment system, whereby you would just hoop the batting and the sulky stabilizer, and you would do the surround of the box, which is the first stitch that comes up when you the first colorway, and then you'd apply the quilt on top of that, if I haven't lost you on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch that box, or I'm not going to stitch it, I've selected it, and I'm going to see where the needle is going to fall. Now there it goes, and you can see here let me see if I can take the camera in. Now you have to be aware that when you are looking at designs because you're standing in front of your machine, you're not looking down on them. And I can see that that is at least one stitch further back, because if I lift the needle and take it along there, when we drop that we can see, well, it's not too bad. Let's lift the needle and go to another side and see how things look. So I'm going to select, there's nearly 300 stitches in this box. So let's go to stitch number 150 and hope that the hoop doesn't hit the camera. Not bad. I'm going to take it back to 75, which should be over here. Take it forward a little bit, because checking one position is not sufficient. Now you can see there, hopefully, that we are a stitch out. Lift the needle, because you can't move around your design when the needle is. So we got 250, so let's go for 245, which will take us over to the other side. And that's not too bad. So I'm tempted to stitch this border and analyse it before I decide what I'm going to do. And if things are really not good, then I'm going to take everything out the hoop. I'm going to get a bigger hoop. No, I'm not going to do that because anybody can do that. I'm going to hoop up just the batting and the stabilizer in this hoop and put the embroidery on top. Sorry to be thinking aloud, but I hope this process will be helping you. So we're going to take this box back to number 1. And I'm going to stitch it out and then come back and show you the result. Right, this is my stitch out and we're going to analyse it. And I think the best way of doing this is to check each corner, because the dent stitches in the leaves will have pulled the embroidery in slightly at the sides, more so than at the top. So we come down to this come down to this corner here and we see it's perfect. We move over to this corner here and it's not too bad. And then as we go up this line here, we can see that it's quite out when it gets to the top. It's out there and it's out there. And this tells me that it needs to move up slightly and also just twist a little bit, because you can see the old lines are there and the new ones are a little bit significantly amount over. And that if I stitched the surround out now, you'd find that the surrounds that went round these leaves would not be that accurate. So I'm not going to try and twist this in this hoop because I don't think there's much leeway. It's because I've hooped it up inaccurately. So I'm going to take it out of its hoop and I'm going to start again basically and offer this up to the box that's stitched on the batting and the softened sheer. Now to do this, I've got to remove just this line of stitches, and I would do this just by catching them every so often. I think it'd be a lot easier if it's out of the hoop. This design is going to be hooped many times. And if you smooth it out, you can catch. And of course it's only stabilizer on the back, so if you snip it a little bit, thank goodness it's not batting on the back. I looked at different ways of doing these sandwiches and I discovered that the batting is best at the back, with the stabilizer is best at the back with the batting in between, and obviously it's probably a good idea to put your backing on. At this point you see it's pulling out nicely, and I just snip these stitches about every inch or two, and that usually allows me to go to the other side and just pull all the threads out. So obviously it needs a little bit more of a trim here where it all starts. Now this stitch out today has turned out very different from what I anticipated. We turn it over here and we know, there we are, look, we can more or less pull the whole thing out. I'm going to redo everything now and stitch out the box and show you how I will align the embroidery onto the square. I think I've prepared everything correctly now. We've got a new, once you've put temporary adhesive spray on batting, it doesn't come apart very well from the stabilizer, so I started afresh, and as you can see we've got this nice square shape, and I've removed all the stabilizer from our design here, It's important to know which side is which was one thing I failed to do, but I probably can tell by the stitches. So I'm going to lay this on here. I'm not going to do, I can see where the lines go on here. They are nicely marked. So I can't do this with the camera in front of the machine. So I'm going to carefully adhere it to in the right place, and then we will do another box to hold it all in place. Now I've got a confession to make, and this should have been obvious. This will not work, because just to lay this embroidery on top of the square is impossible to align everything out, because you get it on one side and it's slightly out on the other. If we turn this over, you'll see how it's you've got to pull it so much it's nigh impossible, because you're trying to stretch it back to its stretched state when it was in the hoop. So this system will not work. So the way around this is to keep the stabilizer, and if you've taken it out, then you've got to twirl things around and do that in a larger hoop. So the moral of this story and this adventure, which has ended up with an embroidery that I daren't stitch this out. It'll look awful. It won't go round. The alignment will be dreadful. So the rule is, don't take it out of the hoop, because you'll never stretch the fabric back into the place it was before. I hope you understand that, and I hope you've understood this disastrous journey I've been on with this embroidery. I'd like to show you what happened to this quilt block. I did stitch it out, despite all the errors and mishaps that happened along the way. And as you can see, it's I wasn't able to save it. The outlines are not in the right place, but I think you can see very clearly the look that I was trying to achieve. And obviously, if we have a group of elements, the larger it is, the more pronounced it will be. Working through that video and watching myself I was a little bit ashamed at the silly mistakes I made. Why I ever imagined that I could remove all the stabilizer and then hold that fabric in the same place again. Once you've released it out of the stabilizer, it's lost forever. I don't think, though, I've ever made that mistake before, and I'm probably not likely to make it again. So the two big mistakes I made were taking the embroidery out of the hoop, and also stupidly removing all the stabilizers. So I encourage you to, when things go wrong, as you saw they did for me, and although I'm a bit ashamed as to what went wrong, I don't believe in hiding my mistakes, because I want to help you all, and perhaps because I was filming, I had to carry on with the process. But on reflection, looking back, perhaps I should have turned my machine off, walked away, had a cup of coffee and returned to it, having thought about it logically. But you see the process that I went through, and my reasons for showing it to you, as well as showing you how to get out of these situations, is to encourage you that we all make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes our embroidery products go mad, you know. But don't be discouraged. There are always lessons to be learnt, even if it means that we never make that silly mistake again. And as you can see, the finished design wasn't that terrible. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but never mind. I hope you'll forgive me for the mistakes that I made while I was filming. Trying to do two things at once is quite a challenge. Anyway, I hope that when you, if you choose to embroider out these quilt blocks in the Strawberry and Cream collection, I hope that your experience of stitching them out will not encounter the the degree of problems that I had. Thank you for watching. Happy embroidering. Bye for now.